Hi guys, Dave here again with Go Surf. Come in, grab a cup of tea, put your feet up, and I'm going to talk a bit more about fins. Oh, I'll be cold in a minute. Right, so first episode of this we were talking about fins and the different kinds of fin setups. We were talking about the differences between your single fin, your 2+1, your thruster, your quads. This time we're just going to talk the fin anatomy and fins in general, what to look for, what the different attributes do. I'm going to talk through what makes up a fin, and the important dimensions and jargon and the stuff that you're going to hear when you talk about fins in the shop. So yeah, there's a lot of different fin systems. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk through the two main systems, the FCS and Futures fins, and then I'm going to give you some of the fundamentals on what you need to look at when you're selecting the fins. Yeah, for a lot of people, you're going to go into a surf shop and you see something like you see a shelf of fins that looks something like this, and it's like, you know, where do I start? So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and simplify that for you a little bit. Now, first things first is the two main fin systems that are available these days. These are the popular ones. Basically, the two main fin systems are Futures and FCS. Now, these are FCS2, and that's just the standard Futures fin. The original, see if I've got some in here. So the original FCS started off with just two tabs. So you quite often see these referred to as a two-tab fin, and they would just have two little tabs. You'd slot them in, two little grub screws would keep it in place. They've moved on now, and they are now a detachable system. So basically, this fin goes into the box. It goes into this little slot here, and you just pop it down. There's a little titanium rod inside the fin plug, and that keeps it in there, and when you want to get it out, you just put something soft behind there, give it a little lift, and it'll just pop out. And then this is the Futures system. Futures basically do something similar but with one screw. So you come in through the box here, you push it in and it sticks in a little bar, you push it in there, and then a little grub screw comes in the side and just holds this down. So that's your two fin systems. I like them both. Originally, the FCS tabs, the original two tabs ones, there were some really good fins and some good options in them, but there wasn't as big a base as there is in the Future fin. So I used to find that you got a much better base connection with this. Now with the new FCS2, you've basically got a similar amount of base connection and a system that literally just locks in. So if you want to play around with fins, these are magic. I've never lost any yet. Some people complain about losing them, but stick them in, pop them down. If you really want to, you can still put the old screws in and tighten the screw up. Yeah, so that's the two fin systems. Those are the ones you're mainly going to see in the shop. So let's just go through the anatomy of a fin, basically. So what you've got is, here's just a side fin. This is a GAM, so it's an Almeric template, and it's in a large size. They do these in 3 different sizes. So when you look at fins, the main things people are going to talk about are base, which is the length along the bottom where it connects with the board, height, which is, or depth, height or depth, which is basically the amount it penetrates into the wave, and sweep, which is basically how much this fin lays backwards like this. So, and that also is a lot about how much is behind this line on the fin. So that's sweep. And then the other one, which is probably one of the biggest, probably mainly the starting place, is surface area. So the actual whole area of that flat surface, if you drew on it and coloured it in to make it simple, and that'll be in square millimeters or square inches. So basically, some quite good guides on the web about selecting a fin. Certainly with the FCS ones there are. Just going to try and help you to narrow down how you would select a fin. So there's a, you know, like that fin chart there, there's a whole magnitude of fins to choose from. You can look at the charts and you can look at the fin wall and you can like, oh my, you know, where do I start? But basically, I would say number one is surface area for your weight. So making sure this fin has enough area to hold you. You know, you get something, if you're 100 kg guy and you stick something like that in, you're just going to get the tail sliding out straight away. You know, if you're 100 kg guy, you might still even need more than that, but basically most of the futures in FCS will be guided by small, medium and large, and there's a weight range for those. And if you've ever tried one, or you can try a friend's, or you know what you like, you're already in a really good position, because you can basically you can go off the surface area and then change a few attributes to suit exactly what you're looking for. So with the FCS system, if you're in FCS 2 or if you're in futures, if you really don't know where to start, the best thing to do is pick the middle of the road template for your weight range. So basically in an FCS in an FCS 2, the performer is the one that's the balanced fin, that it's not too upright, it's not too swept, it's not too thin a tip, it's not, you know, that is what they would call a sort of medium general basic outline. So if you get the best of all worlds outline in your weight range, that is a really good starting place. So yeah, and then you can start playing around. Once you get to know your fins, you can start playing around with base and area and sweep and all the rest of it. So yeah, surface area is really important, especially I actually use it a lot in my single fins. So I've got quite a few single fins, and where they specify the surface area, that's the first thing I work on every time. So if I put that in a board and it starts sliding out, I know that if it's drastically sliding out, it'll be surface area. And then if it's, once you get to someone really near in the ballpark, then you can start adjusting that amount of grip by changing the amount of rake. You can adjust the drive by changing the amount of base and things like that. So we'll talk about that in a bit. So basically, surface area, number one. So in the FCS, you're probably looking at if you're a normal weight guy, you're probably looking at a medium performer. If you're above 80 kgs, you're probably looking at a large performer. If you're over the 90 kg mark, you're probably looking at an extra large performer. And then in the futures fins, I believe it's just called F. It's just called the F series fin. So you'll be into like the F4, the F6, the F8, and again the weight range specified. Okay, so that's surface area. So that's always your basics. That's your starting point. If you ain't got enough surface area, it ain't gonna hold you. If you've got too much surface area, it's gonna be hard to turn. Now, bit of an analogy. Some people say life's a balance of holding on and letting go. Fins are a balance of holding on and letting go, because if you hold on too much, you can't turn. If you let go too much, you can't control. So it's all about speed and control of speed, you know, and all the rest of that. So basically, first thing to do is get your surface area right, and then there's different attributes of a fin that will do different things from there. So let's assume you've got the surface area right, it's good for your weight, and you've got the medium template, and you find you quite like it, or you find something you need to change about it. I'm just going to touch on the attributes that I believe make the biggest effect on other factors. So surface area, again, very important. And then from there, I personally think a lot of your drive and speed comes from the size of the base. So if you get a fin with a really big base, it's got a really big connection to the bottom of the board, so that is going to go very fast for you, but it's going to be harder to turn. Depth is really good for hold. So if you've got a lot of depth, that will actually keep your board held in quite well. But whatever you do, there's a positive and negative. So if you've got lots of depth, it's quite good for hold, but it's going to start creating more drag. And then sweep. So if you're finding that you've probably got the surface area about right, but you're losing control too much, or you want your turns to be more drawn out to suit the board rather than less snappy. So you might have these fins in one board and it feels really good, and you might have them in another board and you're like, oh, it's way too loose. So you could get something with the same surface area and that sweep just comes a bit further back. So that's kind of the difference when you look at this performer here to the Almerix template. This is really swept fin by comparison. I actually really like a swept fin because I'm not a really snappy turner. I'm not an older guy. I'm a bit heavier. I'm not a high performance surfer, and some people like those because they're a little bit more upright and you can maneuver them a bit easier. So yeah, so base gives you a lot of drive, height gives you a lot of hold, sweep, less or more sweep will make your turns sharper or more drawn out, basically. So that's really your true basics of fins, and you can't go too far wrong inside of those. So that's basically they're your short board and performance board fins and fin systems. As you go into longboards, you've got this what they call the slider box, which you'll see the slider rail. So this is fin systems again. So if you've got a traditional slider box, that goes in down the rail, and this just clamps it to the bottom. And then again, since in new developments we've got this FCS2 system where you slide it down the rail and you pop it in, and you can see there's a little titanium pin there. This pushes in and out, so basically as it drops into the slot, that little rod there and ball just pops out and holds itself in the rail. So yeah, that's the real basics. That's the important stuff. I'm going to carry on and talk a bit about materials, but basically those are your main characteristics. So you get your surface area right for you and for your weight and for your board, and then you play around after there with the different aspects of base size, depth, sweep, and then there's also the area and the tip makes a big difference as well. So I like to ride these AM fins because you've got a good bit of surface area, you've got a large base, you've got a lot of sweep, and you've got less tip area. So basically lots of drive, good bit of hold, drawn out turns, and then release still because this tip's quite small. And then something like the Performer will be probably a little bit less drive, possibly a little bit less hold, and then if this was the same area, that tip would hold on a little bit longer where the AM would release. So, and then you also get into inside foil. So all the fins, all the side fins, so that's the left and right side, they'll all have an aeroplane wing type of surface basically, and that's what gives the lift and drive. It works on the same principle as an aeroplane fin. But what they've done in recent years is there's actually what they call an inside foil on this surface. So that helps to generate speed just like the concaves on your board do. So if you're riding smaller waves, you might actually want a fin with inside foil to help generate some speed. And if you've got a board that's not that fast and it's for small waves, that might help. And then sometimes people don't like those because they like the fins to release. So some people like that flat-sided foil. It's just personal preference. Just grab some more of my nice cup of tea, which is gold. Okay, so that's the main anatomy. Hope it's not too confusing. Just gonna go through construction as well, because construction's quite a big thing. So back in the day, they used to make these nasty plastic. Most stuff's made out of plastic, so don't get into the mindset that something's all, you see something fancy. Most of it's all a polymer really at the end of the day, so most of it is plastic technically. But they used to make these horrible plastic fins that are all like natural coloured, or just a plain black, or just a plain white. And what you find with some of those, some of them were okay, but in general what would happen is you put a flex on it like that, and it just doesn't want to come back. So it's really not got good flex memory, and they're quite a soft flex. They're what you'll find in the cheap boards. They're what you find in the board from when you get it from the manufacturer. Also, don't be conned into thinking when you get free fins with a board, and they are the old plastic ones, don't be conned into thinking that that's what the shaper intended you to ride, because they're just the cheap ones basically. So there might be the shaper's template, but in general they were just a standard bog basic middle of the road fins from the manufacturer, and they just chuck them in because they're cheap fins. They're not necessarily the best fins for you, so don't always assume that, oh, that's what the shaper wanted me to ride, because it's probably not. So steer clear of those old plastic ones, and then we go into basically most of them these days. They've all got fiberglass in them to some degree, and they're basically a polymer with fiberglass almost no matter what, and they've just got different support systems which create different flex characteristics. So going through, they do, like the FCS do something that's called the Neo Glass, which is just a cheaper, but basically the cheaper ones, the cheapest way to make them is to mold them, and you can get some quite good fins that are molded the cheaper way. So the FCS2 now have what they call a Neo Glass. It's a basic glass fin, but it is not too bad a flex pattern. I find them a little bit soft myself, but a lot of people swear by them. I was just watching J-Bay and Parko's riding a Neo Glass car, and I usually ride pretty similar fin to Parko, which is quite interesting. So so they're really good. They're a good price point. They're molded. The shapes are good. They're on the standard templates. They're a good starting point. Same with the futures. Most of the futures start in this. Basically, you've got that cheaper glass flex, and then we go straight up to what they call an RTM fin, which is a resin transfer mold. So these will be the one that you see. This is still, again, this is basically it's basically polymer with fiberglass through it. So they're glass reinforced plastic basically. I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on that. And they're the basics, and then they've got this little matting in here, and the matting just stiffens it up a bit. And now they're generally a medium stiffness, so I quite like, you know, they're a really great place to start. The price point's good, the technology's good. Yeah, you can see the mat through there that's weaved into it. That gives it a bit of strength and performance. They're a medium flex. And then you get up into something that's a stiffer flex. So something like this has got your resin transfer mold in there. You can see the mat in there, but it's also got some layers of carbon, which gives this stiff base and a stiff tip, but allows it to flex in the middle. So they're a slightly stiffer fin. Like I say, you know, the Futures now are Futures are working on this ride number system, which tells you the flex from 1 has been super stiff through to 10 has been super flexible, which in theory can be applied to certain waves. Now, I personally believe that flex is more of a personal thing and how it suits you and how it suits the board. I like quite a stiff fin a lot of the times, and I don't like the really flexible fins. And also, don't think that carbon will always make things stiffer, because some of these fins that are actually got carbon in them, you can see the carbon layups in there. Some of these are designed to be more flexible than the ones that don't. So it's really about, if we go back to the basics, you've got in the sort of plastic ones, you've got this first layer that you can see completely through. That's your molded fiberglass, and then they're basically adding additional elements like this cloth or carbon fiber at different positions, at different angles to stiffen up the flex. I'm probably getting quite complicated here, so hopefully people who aren't looking at basics aren't just glazing over. But yeah, basically you'll start going up, you'll get that, and then they'll put some carbon in it, and then, you know, you've got inside foil, and then you might have some strategically laid carbon that's laid up that way. And I don't know if you can see in there, there's also some little lacing in there. You know, it's all pretty super high tech, but basically if you get in these medium ones, as long as they've got these resin transfer molded ones with that little piece of matting in, they're really good. They're a medium flex. And then if you'd like it a little bit more flex, you just, in general, you start looking at what they're saying the carbon's going to do. Most of the time it is stiffer. So that's the two main resin transfer molded technologies. And then you've also got what they call a fiberglass fin. Now, these used to be very stiff back in the day, so what you can see is you see all these grains and lines. What you're seeing is layer and layer and layer and layer and layer and layer of the fiberglass, and then it's been hand foiled down, so as they've shaved the foil onto it, that's why you can see all these layers. So these used to be very stiff, but they're not necessarily now. You see that's got quite a lot of stiff flex, tip flex. So again, that's all about how you lay the fins up and how the materials go into them. Flex and control of flex can be engineered basically. So yeah, but in general, just look out for what you like in your flex. You know, once you've ridden something, again, I would recommend start with the medium FCS or Futures. Start with the medium fin in the right weight for you, in the medium flex, and then you're not spending ridiculous money for a strand of carbon here or there that you're not sure what it's going to do for you yet, and then see how your fin works for you. So that's pretty good for most of it. I'm just going to touch a little bit on a couple of things that you might do if you find things aren't working for you. So, and this is board specific as well, because your board, your volume of your board, whether it's a small wave board, if it's a high performance board, whether it's thick, whether it's got high volume, whether the tail's thin, that's all going to affect the amount of fin it needs. So if you got a board with a really narrow tail, it's not going to need it's not going to need as much fin to grip it. So the fin that works really magic for you in your groveler, you might not need that much fin in your other board. Generally, I find a lot of fins work, you know, certainly that Almerix template, which is my favourite. They do that in 3 different sizes, and this usually works for me in virtually any board to be good. So I don't mess around as much as I used to do, which is probably good. So yeah, onto that. So say you're just thinking of a few things that you'd have problems with your board, so you want to fix it. So like say you've got a fin in your board and it's not got enough hold for you. Okay, it's not got enough hold for you, so maybe you don't have the right surface area. Maybe you pull this out of your performance short board and it's great and it's got lots of grip, and you stick it in the groveler and you're sliding out at the bottom of the wave. if that's a major and it's significant, you probably don't have enough surface area. If your board feels like it's gripping all right, but it's just a little bit skiddy and a little bit skatey for you, you might want to look at the fin that's got a bit more of that rake. If your board's not going fast enough for you, again, it could be surface area, but it could be a question of picking something with a slightly larger base and then maybe letting that base do the job of the drive, and you might get something with a slightly smaller or the same tip area. But again, surface area, number one. So always go back to your surface area. If you're out by a long way, it'll be surface area. And then once you've got your surface area correct, you can start looking at a fin. You're like, oh, this fin works well in my short board, but it's drawing my turns are just too drawn out in my groveler, but it's not. It feels like about the right area. So you might just go a bit more upright. You know, and then you can change your fin area front to back. Like the Almerix templates has two slightly bigger side fins than the middle fin. So if you look there, you can see that's your middle fin and that's your center fin. So your center fin's actually smaller. So these are deliberately designed that you actually get a little bit more release in the tail. And you can actually interchange then. So if I've got that and I'm finding that's a little bit too slippy, I might actually be able to fit a fin in, a center fin from another model that's very similar, like maybe like the Carver, where it's got the same sort of sweep in the back fin, but it's actually a slightly bigger fin, so that's going to give me a bit more hold. Yeah, so those are all the tweaks you can do in between. And again, your materials, you might want something a bit stiffer, you might want something a bit softer. Pretty long video. Fins can get confusing. I'm gonna lay into, I've already got some videos about like longboards fins specifically, what you might use for your groveler, some of the sizes and shapes I quite like. I've done a little guide on single fins and choosing them and where to position them in the board and bits and bobs like that. But that's sorry, it's a pretty long one, but that's the basics. So if you roll into the first 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes of that, that's probably enough for you if you're in your first two years of surfing. But really don't discount the importance of fins and what they can do for your board, because they can really change your board quite a lot. And one really cool thing that I learned, that was actually something that Rusty said from Rusty Surfboards, which I've always stuck to, is when you get a new board, use your go-to fins, and when you get a new fin, use your go-to board. Because if you get a new board and you change your fins to a new fin, it's very hard to nail down what the board's doing and what the fin's doing and what you like about one and what you don't like about the other. So the close is, yeah, experiment, but find something that works for you in most of your boards. And if you get a new board, try that first, and then make those decisions on, maybe I need a bit more surface area, maybe I need a bit more base. You know, this is a grovelly board, so I need a bit bigger fin in there. Yeah, so yeah, good luck, guys. If you want to, if you want to ask me any questions or anything, just put a comment down below. There's some really good fin guides out there from like FCS and Futures for choosing them. Be guided by the weight, because if you look on those fin charts, it'll just blow your mind. But if you rule out everything that's outside of your weight category, that isn't in the fin setup that you want, that's going to rule out an absolute shitload of them for you. So once you're into a large fin, you can go and knock out a load of fins from there, and then find some ones that work for you. Like I say, as a total personal recommendation, AMs, small, medium and large. Same in the Futures, AM, small, medium and large. They're a really, really, really good fin, and I found them working a lot of boards. And also the Futures and FCS ones of their own. Again, the Performer in the FCS and the F series in the Futures, small, medium, large. They're really, really good starting points, and for 90% of people, 90% of the time, if you get that medium one in your right weight range, you're going to be pretty close to the ballpark. So if you can pick some of those up cheap enough, or get a deal with board, find some second hand, start with something like that, and then check things out, ask questions, try your mates. Some places have these fin trial centres, so you can actually just try a fin and see what works for you. And that's the guys in the shop. The cool thing to do is go in with your fins and your board and say, hey, I've got these Performers, they're sliding out a bit for me, what do you suggest? And if they're a good shop, they're going to go to the rack and they're going to go, oh, well, this is a bit more base, this is a bit more depth, or this is a bit more surface area, this is going to hold a bit better for you, and they'll help you out. So yeah, don't be scared to ask questions, and don't let it overwhelm you, because it's like, it's a lot of information, but there's, the technology that's there is just absolutely brilliant these days, so that there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to find a fin that works for you. But you know, some people don't even notice a difference with the fins, and some people notice a huge difference. So yeah, experiment, find out what works for you. Hope this helps. Sorry it's like quite in depth, but they do get a bit crazy when I start going into fins. So yeah, and then check out some of my other videos. I'm gonna have some specific ones, like I say, to longboards and retro boards, and you know, quads and thrusters, and what I like and what to look out for. And if you like this, please click the like, because it means more people will look at it and more people will get some help. I'm all about trying to help people. And if you want to see more, do subscribe. That's cool as well. Yeah, thanks for listening, guys. See ya.